Director of the Canadian Small Church Ministry Centre, sponsored by Small Church Connections. And this is us, Canadian Small Churches in Action podcast. Today, we have a special guest with us, all the way from, as you can see from the background, the beautiful climes of, I'll call it BC, not Saskatchewan, where I live. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, just tell us a bit about her own ministry background and some of the things that she's currently doing. And then I'll start in with some questions about, how small churches can be affected by a number of the things that you're involved in, Wendy. So, sorry, I just sort of started introducing you already. I'll let you take it away and introduce yourself, a little bit of who you are and where you've come from and that type of thing.
Sure. Thank you. So it's really lovely to be with you. My name is Wendy Kittlitz, and I am the Senior Vice President of Counseling and Care Ministries at Focus on the Family Canada. I'm also the Executive Director of Kerith Retreats, which is our one of our ministry leader programs here. I've been with Focus on the Family for 17 and a half years. Kind of getting to be one of the veterans around here.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I do come from some ministry experiences. We were just chatting a little bit. I taught in a Bible school in Saskatchewan for 4 years in the late 80s. Went from there to do a master's degree in counseling at the Mennonite Brethren Seminary in Fresno, California.
Yeah.
And really loved that. Met my husband. We moved to Alberta, into Edmonton, and I have served in several churches, both on staff as well as on leadership teams. So I know a little bit about the world of the pastor. And then I spent about 10 years actually working as an adoption social worker in Alberta, and then a little bit here in BC when we first moved back here almost 20 years ago. So that's a little bit about my background. I came to Focus on the Family as one of the first counselors in the Clergy Care program, and have sort of worked my way up ever since then.
That's a very interesting background. I love it. I mean, my locale has been Edmonton. I've lived in Prince Albert. I know where Bethany is, the school that you went to. A number of the situations and locales sound very, very familiar to me. And as you said, having worked in churches, you have a good background in some of the counseling type of areas. Maybe just expand a little bit on what Focus on the Family is doing for church leadership through your ministry, through counseling, Kerith Retreats and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. We have a couple of distinct programs for pastors. I started here 20 years ago in a program we call the Clergy Care Network. And the Clergy Care Network was born out of a task force 20 plus years ago that was comprised of Focus on the Family Canada, the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, and about 8 or 10 different denominations. Some of the larger denominations in the country came together and said, we need to do something for pastors that offers them some counseling support that is confidential, because sometimes going to your district people is a little bit of an intimidating thing to do, and particularly when the issues are very personal. They either may not understand, or they may not be well equipped to help, or you just may not want to disclose some of this information. So Focus on the Family volunteered to take on a program where we would have professional counselors with ministry experience. So when I hire counselors in our program, I always look for people who have some kind of ministry experience. So for example, one of the guys on our team right now is a pastor's kid.
Oh, okay.
So he grew up in the church. He knows church life backwards and forwards.
Probably a little more than he wants to know some days.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So he's a very valuable member of our team currently. But we've had others in the past that have had significant ministry experience. So what we do is we have a 1-800 call line. It's 1-888-5-CLERGY. And pastors, spouses, pastors' kids, missionaries, anybody that would consider themselves someone in ministry is welcome to call and get some free counseling. Typically, our counseling is a one-shot. You call, you get a 1-hour consultation. But one of the services that we do provide for pastors is a little bit of extended services. If we think that we can genuinely help somebody in a short-term counseling model, so say 3 to 6 sessions, Our counselors will walk with them for that time. It's not appropriate for people that really need long-term counseling. It's not appropriate for people that don't have a fairly distinct issue that they need to work on. But we want to lend that support because we know that, as particularly the audience that you're speaking to, small town pastors, sometimes finding a counselor in your community is really difficult. Either there isn't one, or they're somebody's brother-in-law.
Yeah, we way too many people. Yes.
Yeah, or they go to your church, and we call that a dual relationship. You really shouldn't be counseling people at the church that you attend. So we know that it's a little more difficult. So, we're here. We can be accessed across the country. We run the program 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. And you just call and book an appointment with one of our counselors at a time that's convenient for you and for them. And they'll call you back and have a little conversation. So that's our Clergy Care Line. In addition to that, we have a website, which is clergycare.ca, and a monthly e-newsletter to pastors called Focus on Pastors. And that's part of our Clergy Care Network program. Then about 4 years later, we were incredibly privileged to have a conversation with a family in southern Alberta who had purchased land and built a beautiful lodge and a beautiful caretaker's house. And they had a heart for pastors, wanted to run programs for pastors for rest and relaxation. And they're great builders, but not such great program developers.
Yeah,
and they didn't have the network to get the word out to pastors. And so they came to us and said, would you be interested in doing programs for pastors in this setting? We would literally give you the property to do that. So we had an arrangement with them that for 10 years, the property would be retained in their names, but we would run programs. And if at the end of 10 years, we still wanted to continue doing what we were doing, they would give us the property. And so that happened in 2017. The property is legally ours now. And we have been successfully running pastors programs there since 2006. That was 2007. So those programs are called Kerith Retreats. And it's a 7-day ministry leaders program. We define ministry leaders relatively broadly. If you're a pastor, if you're, vocational, bivocational, if you are a pastor's spouse, we encourage married people to come together with their spouses.
Right.
We strongly encourage that. But we're very open to singles as well. In fact, one of the things I'm finding very interesting, we've just opened a new center in Ontario, and we're seeing a lot of singles show up for those. And we've had singles kind of off and on through the years, but never quite so many in such a short period of time as what we're starting to see in Ontario. So that's been an interesting development. So we moved from a center in Alberta in 2007 to opening our own center in Manitoba, again, through the vision of an amazing donor family. Gave us the land, gave us some money to get started building on the land. So we have a center just outside of Winnipeg, and we just added a new center in Port Perry, Ontario in March of this year. So we started our very first Kerith Retreat there in September.
Now, these sound like just great places to retreat, period. Centers, locales that would be beautiful. And
they're gorgeous. I suppose they're out in nature. They feel very isolated, even though they're not really very far from the nearest city.
And what does it take for someone to sort of get into the program, if you want to call it that? What steps do they need to take?
Well, they would go on our website and fill out a registration form. We charge $1,700 per couple and $1,150 per single. And that fee includes 7 nights accommodation, all of your meals, all of your snacks, and a program that we run. And it's really that simple. People who would have difficulty affording the fees that we charge, we do have financial assistance available. And they're welcome to just indicate that when they register that they could use some help with the fees. And we have donors that very generously enable us to reduce those fees for people. It's a great program, 7 days, it's actually 8 days, 7 nights. And we have experienced ministry leaders that we hire to run the program. So every day there's a couple of hours of teaching sessions on topics like who are you in Christ, grief and loss in ministry, observing the Sabbath, because pastors are great about talking about the Sabbath. They're not quite so great about having their own Sabbath.
Yeah, I've heard that. Let's see, when was the last time I took one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're excited about those programs. We get tremendous feedback from people that have attended. And word of mouth is one of our best forms of advertising. People go and they tell their friends. And my dream would be that we have a waiting list to get into those programs, because we can serve we run them 11 months of the year. People don't want to go to those kinds of things in December, but every other month we run 1 week per center all across the country now.
So I actually had a pastor who must have hit almost a waiting list time, because he said, I contacted them, and unfortunately that particular week that they were available wasn't available, but that's a good thing in one sense. I mean, it's unfortunate that this particular case didn't work out, but that you have that many people that want to be involved. So you've got both the Clergy Care Network and Kerith Retreats for leadership personnel and that type of thing. Let me ask you a question. What do you find is sort of the recurring issues that people are bringing up nowadays that are in leadership? We've come out of a pandemic, and others have come out of other transition things that are happening. What are you finding are the largest or biggest issues that you're dealing with right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I actually asked my frontline staff to weigh in on this, and what they told me, there's kind of several things that really stand out. The primary topic is burnout.
Okay.
And the pandemic is not the primary issue, but it's something that has exacerbated issues that people were already dealing with, and it's just kind of made everything worse.
Just kind of accelerated it all, didn't it? Yeah.
It really did. Yeah. It really did. And then they tell me that the burnout discussion leads to other discussions around issues like identity and career and ministry changes. So, a lot of pastors these days are asking the question, who am I really? What does it mean to be a pastor? Is this something I need to continue doing? Is this something I should continue doing? And then what do I do if I don't do this? So those conversations are going on quite often with our team. Church politics.
Really?
Ramped up quite a lot during the pandemic, as we all know. We talk a lot to pastors about church conflict, and so whether that's between staff members, whether that's between the pastor and the congregation, with board members, how do you deal with those kinds of things, and particularly some of the hurt that comes out of that. We walk a lot with pastors who have been deeply wounded by their churches, and that's really a really sad place to be. And then related to that is grief in ministry. Pastors watching people leave, watching their churches shrink. We think of grief as being about when we lose a person, but grief goes so much deeper than that. So many losses in ministry, and so we talk a lot about that, both on our Clergy Care Line and at our Kerith Retreats. And then I just want to say, we do talk to a lot of pastors' wives, and there's a few things that they will often call about. One is how to support their husband during ministry challenges. Every now and again, they'll call and talk about parenting issues, marriage concerns. It's really sad on the days that we hear from pastor spouses who feel like they're being abused by their pastor husbands. And those are really hard conversations to have. And then the other topic that comes up fairly regularly is that we're a good resource for pastors and their spouses to call just to consult about issues they're dealing with in their churches. We may have ways to point them to resources that would be helpful for things they're dealing with. So, for example, we have a marriage intensive program. If you've got some, couples in your church that are really struggling with marriage issues, well, that can they can just be the support to the couple rather than trying to be the counselor to the couple.
Mm-hmm. Those issues it brings up a number of questions I would have. One would be particularly dealing with conflict. What is forgiveness? What is the ability to both know what your identity is, who you are in Christ, but also your place. Well, so many issues that come up with that. How does the 7-day, if I could ask about the 7-day retreat,
Sure.
what do you find the sort of trajectory is as you go through? Do you find that there's, well, how does it look as you go through? First day I'm doing really badly. Second day I've sort of heard something. Third, what is the sort of experience that you would have in that 7-day retreat?
Well, everybody comes in a really different space, right?
Mm.
So it's really interesting watching the group sort of come together because it's for couples or singles. And usually they're intermixed. It's not like we have a group that's all singles and a group that's all couples. Mostly we have groups that are all couples because that's mostly what we serve. But people come in and they're usually weary. That's usually what they have in common at the beginning.
Yeah.
Some are hurting, some are not hurting, some are being proactive. Some just have heard about the program and just think, well, this would be a really good thing to do for my own self-care. And we applaud that. So they come in and we kind of start out pretty relaxed, so the first day it's really just dinner and introductions in the evening. Next day they get to sleep in the whole morning.
What a great idea.
Yeah. Just there's nothing that happens till the afternoon. Take your time, go for a walk, beautiful settings, just relax, and take a load off. And then they begin to do some teaching. And along with the teaching, and I think this is really key to this program, they have 3 private sessions with the ministry leader couple that are leading the program. And so those are in the afternoons typically. And that's where couples get to really unpack what they're coming with. So, some couples are coming with some marital distress. Some of them are coming with, a lot of conflict in ministry. Some of them are coming, just plain tired. It isn't necessarily anything in particular. It's just ministry has just been really wearing for a really long time. And so they begin to unpack those. And we use 2 different inventories with couples.
Wow,
So
okay.
one of those is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So early on, that's a pretty non-threatening, just kind of talks about your personality type, style. And one of the things that we find consistently is that a lot of pastors are technically introverts that are functioning like extroverts.
Yes, very much
Right.
so. Yeah.
And so, it's kind of helping pastors to sort of own this is who you are. And it's okay to be who you are. Others on your team, even your spouse, are probably different from you. It's unusual to find, 2 people with exactly the same pattern. I don't know if I've ever seen that actually, but I suppose it's theoretically possible.
I suppose it is. Yeah.
Even then, if you say
I,
you have different manifestations of the same personality type, right? So it's really interesting. And so that's kind of a day of sort of grounding people in, this is who God made you to be. Own it, like love it, be okay with it. Recognize that sometimes you have to step out of that in order to do ministry. Like those introverts that are extroverts, you can't be a very effective pastor if you kind of sit in your introversion all the time. But you can't, like, that'll destroy you if you always have to function in an extroverted way when truly you're an introvert, because you have to get energized. And so introversion, extroversion is all about how you get energized. And if you get energized by being on your own, as opposed to being out with people, that becomes a real challenge. So our directors have a lot of fun with that. And it just kind of grounds people in, okay, this is something we all have in common. We all have a personality type. Let's talk about that. It's sort of a non-threatening way. And then the second inventory that we do is called the Taylor-Johnson temperament analysis. And so that's a little snapshot of kind of where people are emotionally at a given point in time. So they fill it out in the weeks before they come, and they fill it out for one another if they're married. So it kind of gives you a indication of, are you, how you see yourself, is that consistent with how your spouse sees
Yeah.
you? And how they're experiencing you at this point in time. Like, it's not set in stone, but it's interesting because, that can lead to some little deeper discussions. What's actually going on here? Where are your points of stress, and how are you coping with those? And if people come with their own agenda to talk about certain issues, they certainly can do that, bearing in mind that our staff are not counselors. They're ministry leaders. So they're kind of there more for coaching than for counseling. But yeah, I think what happens is people come very weary. They begin to regain energy as the week goes on. They begin to process things. There's lots and lots of time for, personal reflection and just going for walks and getting some exercise and getting some, great food and being served. Like our hosts serve these people like they're kings and queens. And it's a lovely thing to, because pastors spend their whole life serving people. It's really lovely to have the shoe on the other foot for a change. But yeah, like people come tired. They usually leave with a good deal more energy and reserve and strength to carry on.
So as they look at, I suppose, changing their world, moving from the tiredness, the weariness, to a greater sense of hopefulness and excitement. Let me ask a question, just for those pastors that may be listening, leaders that may be listening. What would bring about that change for many of them, for their ministry world? Well, let's start. What type of things might they look at?
Well, in the context of our events, I think where the change comes is that we really ask them to be purposeful about building in better rhythms of rest, rhythms of self-care, rhythms of, not making yourself more important than everyone else. Paul talks about, not considering others better than ourselves, or not considering ourselves better than others, but being servants. And I think that the pastors have that in spades. I think they want to do that, but at the same time, they have to take care of themselves if they're going to serve well. And we always use the analogy of putting on your own oxygen mask on the plane before you try to help other people. And so we talk about that a lot. And, building up your own resources, becoming resilient people. We've just added a new session in our program on resiliency. And it comes out of some research that Dr. Margaret Clark at Briarcrest College has done on resiliency in the ministry. Yes. And it's a great study, and it's become a very popular session. How do you build that in? How do you and to me, and this is kind of, your larger question was about, how do we kind of change the world?
Yeah.
I think we look at what we experience is not always what God intended it to be, right? I mean, God didn't intend us to work 24/7, He told us to take a Sabbath day,
yes.
Right? He did it himself, He didn't intend for there to be a world full of wars and conflict. He didn't intend the church to be a place where there's nothing but criticism. So just to kind of, I think, set your sights a little higher than that and say, okay, like, how do we do what we can to function at the level that God wants us to function, which is healthy and strong and depending on Him and not depending on our own selves, which is what we tend to do, especially when we're in conflict and crisis. It's like, well, what can I do to control this situation? And the truth is we can't. So, the sooner we accept that and find the resources that we need to just stay healthy in the midst of it. I love Pete Scazzero is a big idol of mine. Consider him a friend, which is a lovely thing. And, I'm always drawn back to, emotionally healthy spirituality is not just about spirituality. It's all, there's a pretty big smattering of psychology, like good psychology,
Hmm.
knowing who we are, knowing where we've come from, knowing how that impacts us. And, the conflict that we see around us is often from lack of understanding of all those things, and lack of vision that this is not how God wanted it to be. God wanted there to be peace on earth. God wants there to be peace in our churches. God wants there to be peace in our families. And as we, I think we just have to kind of say, we want to set our sights higher.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that leads me. I'm looking at the clock here and I'm saying, well, we're pretty well at the end of this time together. It sort of leads me to the question of, so if you had one piece of advice that you would give to small church pastors, yeah, what would that piece of advice be that you would pull out?
Well, I think if I were to sum it up, I think what I would say is don't be a lone ranger.
Okay.
You need support in ministry. We have some supports we can help offer you. We have counseling, we have Kerith Retreats. But there's all kinds of other places where you can get support. And I think that the people that are the most successful in ministry are the people that find those sources of support, and whether that's, another pastor in your community or another pastor in your denomination that you can kind of link arms with that really gets, where you live, or whether it's like a pastoral couple that you really identify with. I just think that, attempting to kind of go it alone is what's going to kill you at the end of the day. We were made to be in relationships. And I think that extends to our ministry lives as much as it is to our personal lives. And I think divorcing your personal life from your ministry life, is kind of a recipe for failure. Like, you are who you are. And you need relationships. And it's not, if you can find a safe person
Hmm.
somewhere in your circles, life will be better. And, that safe person won't necessarily be in your church.
Yeah.
Sad to say. That safe person might not even be in your actual community, might not even be in your household, but hopefully everyone can find a safe person to talk to. And if you can't find one, call us, because, at least for a season, we'd love to be a safe person for you.
So that brings me to the little bit of do a little bit more advertising. Tell us how we can get a hold of
Yeah.
either the counselors or the Kerith Retreat and that type of thing. Just yeah.
Yeah. So the counselors, 1-888-5-clergy.
Okay, so I've got 5 clergy around me too, but what does 5 clergy mean as far as numbers go? 1-888-5.
Well, I would have to look that up, honestly.
Yeah, isn't that it's on your phone? Okay,
know. It's on my phone. I could probably figure it out.
I'm sure we can.
Choose 6 something.
Okay, so 1-888-5-clergy.
And if you need to find it, it's at clergycare.ca. Easy.
Okay, clergycare.ca.
Go to the website. We have lots of great articles on our website.
Oh, excellent.
Lots of great resources. We put up fresh articles every month coming from our Focus on Pastors e-newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter on the website. So if you don't get it, it's free. It comes to your inbox once a month. We don't spam you with all kinds of stuff in between, but it's a good place to find us reliably. And then you can also find information about the Kerith Retreats there, but there's also a Kerith Retreats website, which is kerithretreats.ca. Very simple.
Funny. That seems to work well. Yeah, kerithretreats.ca, starting with a K, right?
Starting with a K, Kerith. Kerith, of course, being the brook where Elijah was refreshed by God.
I was just reading that this morning and reminded about how good it is that sometimes you just have to be away and be away from everything else and all the Jezebels and everybody else that's gonna kill you in life. You need a Kerith retreat.
Absolutely. And like I said, if we literally could sell those out every year, that would be a dream come true. We often have spots going begging because, with just 2 centers, everybody wants to go to Alberta, because we're close to Banff. Mm-hmm. But I'm afraid that Manitoba and Ontario, we hope will
Ontario be nice. Yeah.
And you know what? And I got to tell you, like, our Manitoba center is beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you will not regret going there.
Mm-hmm.
not for a
Maybe
minute.
maybe you need to look at Saskatchewan, which I think has the northern Saskatchewan is just beautiful.
It
Okay,
is.
there may be that donor out there just waiting to hear this today and
There you
say,
go. And if they hear it, give us a call.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Wendy. This has
Thank
been
you.
great, and I look forward to just having this out there and letting people hear from you. Thanks once again.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and yeah, whatever we can do to get the word out there. We just want to serve pastors. We love them, and we want them to be healthy and serving God.
All right. Thank you.
All right.